Can I live?
What's up, everybody? It's Justin from Process Sports Radio. Welcome back. We have a special episode today. I have the guys from FitNation here. We have Ben, Jazz, and Romy. How are you guys doing today?
Good. It's a nice cold day in Vancouver today.
I have similar sentiments. It's freezing out here in Toronto. I'm still not used to that cold weather out here, but nonetheless, we're nice inside today. So today we're going to go through the history of FitNation and how you guys are kind of bucking the trend, I would like to say, how you guys are kind of opening a new avenue to not just personal training, but personal wellness. And I really feel like that's a huge topic that especially in our community, that people don't talk about enough. So once again, I want to thank you guys for coming on.
Thank you.
For all you guys, this will be up on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Plus, you can check the clips on my Instagram. Also, please follow all these guys on their socials. I will make sure I put them in the description in the video because they always put out great content. So why don't you guys give me a background of each one of you? So why don't we start off with you, Ben?
So myself, where do I even start? I born and raised in Surrey. Went through the school system in Surrey, went into university, dropped out really quick. Realized it wasn't for me. And so right after that, got into a job that would hopefully give me a career, which is at the bank. Worked my way up, did it for about 5 years before I had that epiphany that most entrepreneurs have, that like, okay, one, I can't work for someone, and two, like, I need to do something I love. Right now, I'm doing something I hate. And I've always worked out. I think the first time I lifted weights, I was 12 years old. So I knew, like, I was deeply passionate about fitness and personal development and stuff like that. And I just kind of went off on a whim and got certified as a personal trainer. And before, not to give out all the details, but long story short, partnered up with my best friends. And, here we are, almost 10, 11 years later, still doing the damn thing, getting better every single day.
Born in Vancouver, and I grew up in Vancouver and then moved to Surrey and then grew up in Surrey. My dad put me in track and field when I was about 12 or 13. And then that's where I learned weightlifting, was through track and field. Both my brother and I ran track. And then from that point, and that led me towards understanding what kinesiology was. And then I got into the kinesiology program at UBC. And then I went through that program, and for the full 4 years had no real idea of what direction to take. Started training people in about my fourth year, I think it was. That was around the time that Ben had come up with the idea of FitNation, and that's when he got his personal training certification. And so I was kind of like, hey, this is a great idea. I think I want to join in on this. So then I kind of joined forces with him, and then now the rest is pretty much history after that point.
And last but certainly not least, Romy. Quick story for you guys. So if you guys don't know, he was my manager who hired me at Bell. And it's been crazy to see how he's gone from Bell Mobility to now being a certified nutritionist and all that. So last Sim, or as they call you, Romy, let's have your story.
Yeah, so with me, very similar to my brother, I was born here in Vancouver. Also lived in Surrey for about 8-9 years. And then for me, so we worked at Bell Mobility. I was in sales management for about 8-9 years, and then realized that it wasn't for me. Very similar to Ben. I wanted to be an entrepreneur and start my own business. And for me, the reason why I got into nutrition was I battled with a lot of food issues. So a lot of my relationship with food was bad. I was an overweight kid when I was a kid, and also into adulthood. So I need to change that. And then when I started learning about it, and then I kind of knew that, hey, I really want to provide this to individuals. I really enjoyed helping people, and that's something you probably know as well too. When I was your manager,
yeah.
And then I linked up with these guys. It was just a perfect situation. It was just kind of like meant to be. It was just the universe. So here we are now.
Definitely can have a lot of good memories with you being my manager. I could definitely say one of my most favorite managers, especially make us do push-ups in the back of the Bell Mobility store.
You did what?
Yeah.
You made push-ups?
Yeah. Every day when I first started, I was like, he started, hey, let's do some push-ups. I'm like, what is this guy talking about? Like doing push-ups in the work. He gets the speakers, starts playing the music, and every day he wanted to see if we could reach our new goal of push-ups. So that was one of my very strongest impressions of Sim or Romy. But I want to go back to Jazz and Ben. How did the origins of FitNation begin, and what kind of made you guys come up with that business idea?
Ben?
Yeah, I think like I said, I was doing something I hated, and I knew fitness was always a passion for me. But collectively, when we first thought of it, it was like, we spend all of our time in the gym, and that's one thing that we would do it for free. Like, I mean, you didn't have to pay us to do it. So early on, there was something really deep rooted. Like, it's almost like, as I try and put words together for it, it just doesn't do it like justice. It's something that was like innate in us. I truly do feel that like I was born to do what I'm doing right now. And it's like trying to describe why do I love my wife? Like, I'm going to give you these superficial words that don't really, but it was innate in us, right? And as for like the organization and everything, we're heavily influenced by hip hop. Like, growing up, I mean, not only did we listen to the music, we dissected the lyrics, and then from there we wanted to know who the producers were, and how the song came together, who was the composer, blah 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 blah. And one of our biggest influences was Jay-Z. So when we first kind of like we got into it, Jay-Z is a bigger businessman than he is a rapper at this point. So that led us into the business realm and kind of like saying, okay, hey, Jay's bought his masters back. Okay, from masters he got out of his Def Jam deal and started Rock Nation. And it's not a coincidence that the name FitNation and Rock Nation are so similar, because we're so heavily influenced by what that man's done, coming from where he's come from. It's almost the story of the Surrey kid, coming out of this like Surrey and then developing their own business, having the odds stacked up against you, and still being able to come out and still own your masters and work for yourself and do what you do. Life's a fucking metaphor, right? And it's kind of poetic how shit turns out when your early influences start to kind of look like the rest of your life.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great point, because as for myself, huge hip hop head, big hip hop fan, and I always try to influence. I think sports and hip hop are so synonymous with each other; they go hand in hand, right? And I know all you guys are big sports guys, right? Rappers want to be ballers, ballers want to be athletes, right?
Yeah.
So I think like that is something that is such a big major impact on my life, and that's what kind of steered me towards this creative outlet. Was if I want to talk about things that I like, being a kid from Surrey, most kids from Surrey love sports, hip hop, right? You could talk about those issues, right? So that's really cool. It's amazing to see how people from the local community can take those hobbies and passions and turn into a business idea. That's something that's really truly inspiring, actually, quite frankly.
We basically wanted to like put our like Damon John sort of flip on it in terms of when he had FUBU, it was like for us by us, and FitNation saw that like the underserviced market was saw like Punjabi individuals, predominantly women. So women like our mothers, our chachis, masis, and women like that. And so we saw that there was a hole in the market around that area, and that's kind of the demographic that showed us a lot of love in the beginning and really supported our brand and really helped establish it to the point of where it's at now. And obviously now we work with many other sort of demographics and stuff, but the whole concept, like Ben was talking about, is it's like it's for us, it's by us, and it's for a community. It wasn't necessarily getting the love beforehand.
Yeah, exactly. I think like when you take pride in that's something that it's yours, right? It just makes it even better. And I really see that through you guys' work right now. But you guys said any business starts up, there's gonna be bumps in the road, or any process or journey in life, there's gonna be bumps in the road. So I'll start with you, Sim. Was there any when you were changing career choices from nutrition, from sales management to going to nutrition, was there any points, bumps in the road where you just wanted to give up and go back to what you have known for so long, or was that a full mindset change?
Yeah, no, it was difficult in the beginning. I'm 34 years old. This was about 2 years ago. So, I was kind of making segue into the corporate world, trying to get into the regional manager, but I just felt like there was something that was holding me back, and I needed to make that decision where like, hey, I don't think this is for me. It was a tough decision. I was comfortable. I was making decent money. And then I went from that, and now I'm slowly building my my business, which is going to take some time. But I have full true faith in it, and I have two guys beside me that help me every day, and then it can't that's right there is very, very tremendous for myself. And I'm kind of seeing myself grow as well too. I seen these guys grow, and I knew that hey, this information, this knowledge that I have now, there's truth to it. It works. So that just keeps me going and keeps me motivated that, hey, I can do this.
Now, when you guys were starting up FitNation, Of course, there's bumps. Was there ever a point in time you guys were like, forget this, let's just go to follow the safe route, go back to what the path more traveled and the path less traveled?
I can't say that we ever felt that, but I don't want to say like there wasn't ever a point where we were like, you know what, fuck this, I'm gonna go back to the bank, go back to mortgage broking and get a job at a clinic. It was never like that, but it was definitely days where it was fucking tough, man. Like, when we first started, it was Craigslist ads that would take us to, Kitts Beach in Vancouver. So if we live in Surrey, it's a good 45 to an hour to get there. And you're only making like, $25 a session. So you're burning, $23 of gas to get there. So like at first when you're doing it, it just didn't make sense. But that fire that we had inside of us, that was just like, it was like a little fucking engine that was just going and going and going. And it's just like, yeah, numbers don't make sense, but keep building and keep building, keep building. But yeah, there was days where, even when we had our first facility, 18-hour days, right? And like stuff like that. And it was just like, you sit there and like, fuck, is this gonna be the rest of my life? Like, am I gonna just have to hustle like this all the time? There were like, I'd say pit stops like that, but there was never a point where it was just like, fuck, like I gotta go, like this isn't working out for me. And we always held strong.
And do you think like with you two being really close friends and be able to keep each other holding each other up like that, that's kind of what helped you guys going through the situations?
Most definitely. I mean, to be able to do this, to be able to run a business is a huge privilege. But to be able to do this with one of my best friends, like if there's a word bigger than best, like my brother. And that's the icing on top. I mean, we'll be telling our kids about this, right? So I think that's one of the most, that's one of the things that also keeps me going. But I don't want to say that doesn't come without its challenges. I mean, for anyone out there that wants to go into business with their best friend, I say it with a caveat. People are going to change. Your relationship has to evolve. You have to have room for that evolution. You can't just say, this is my friend and we're going to run a business together and everything's going to remain the same. That's not the case either. You have to leave room for people to grow, your relationship to grow and evolve as well, right? You're not going to be the same person you were, when we started this thing. What were we, Jazz, like 18, 19? I'm 31
like
now.
Yeah, so we were just about to head into our 20s, and then now we're 31. So we've been like doing it for a decade and kind of doing it together for that period of time. I think after the initial, for sure, after we signed a lease, there was absolutely no turning back. Like that's 100% sure. There was never any inkling of it. There was no other option. There was, at that point, there was nothing, like this was just going to have to work out. And if things weren't going well, we weren't busy enough, then we had to figure out why. There was no plan B necessarily. But yeah, I think in the beginning, maybe in 2011, 2012, like when we were first, we were questioning like, how could this model work? Would this model work? And there was a lot of tough times then. But after we got that first place, man, there was no looking back whatsoever. And that's the other thing with us too. Sometimes we have a lot of pride, me and this guy. Like we just, for the life of it, if we've chosen something, we're gonna be successful. We don't give a fuck. Like if we'll crawl to the finish line if we have to.
Tell me nothing. Those vibes, baby, all day. But also, I think also one of the harder parts with the model early on was no one had really done something like we've been doing in our community, right? Or even in the city. And it was like, it's something that hasn't been tried before. There's no formula for it.
Exactly.
So when we went out there, it was actually now looking in hindsight, it's a way bigger risk than we actually appreciated at the time. Maybe we were just young and dumb back then, and thank God we were, because we didn't have like, oh, so-and-so did this like, 5 years ago, and okay, we can kind of map out the plan and kind of we'll be okay because they did it. And it was like, no, you guys are training people in backyards and you're doing it at schools, and you have this model, and even figuring out what your packaging is going to be and how your sessions are going to run and stuff like that. It was like, yeah, a lot of it was just, no one's done this before. This is scary as hell, right? But again, you got to follow your gut more than your brain sometimes. You can't do that all the time because that shit will bite you in the ass. But when you do it, it'll definitely pay off.
It's kind of like, to use another sports analogy, it's kind of like that sometimes the young team that's up and coming against the veteran team, they don't know what it's like to be there. So they just go they just go balls in, right?
Mhm.
And they just go and they don't know any better, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes, like you said, it bites you in the ass, but sometimes you reap the benefits of those being ignorant to it, right?
Most definitely.
So through all these journeys, bumps on the road and stuff like that, when you look back at your journey for the 10 years and then same for the last couple of years, when you look back at those bumps in the road and everything, how much more do you appreciate those from when you look at that point and now looking at where you guys stand now?
I mean, yeah, like a lot. It's those bumps in the road are Jazz and I will be sitting there at the end of a long week, like say on a Friday in our lunchroom, and we'll just have a random thought, and it's now like an appreciated memory than a sour point, if you will. Like some of those mistakes, it's more like, yo, remember when that happened? And then one of us will tune back in and like, hey man, look where we're at right now. Right. So now when your further outlook comes for, because shit's gonna happen in the future too, you kind of take that in stride and you just know like, I'm gonna go through this right now, but I'm gonna be all right. I'm gonna be all right because I'm staying true to everything that I'm doing, right?
Definitely.
I had a mentor tell me once, he said, you know, right now in your eyes, you just want to get to the end point, like you want the success. And you in your mind think that once you get to a certain number, you're gonna feel a certain way. He's like, I'll tell you right now, that's not gonna happen. He's like, you know, you have to fall in love with the journey. He's like, it's these small things and these small bumps and small experiences. And I think about over last weekend, I was just talking to Ben about this while we were up in Whistler about that. Like now I've started to really enjoy the journey itself, and I no longer care about the destination per se, whereas before I was like that. And when I was like that, once I got to that, it wasn't as fulfilling as I thought it was going to be. I just kind of let myself down. And so now I have a change in perspective.
I think early on we were like, hey, okay, this is what it looks like. This is the definition. And we're just steamrolling there, not even enjoying the scenery at all. Now that we're both in our 30s, we already feel like the destination was fucking 5 hours ago. We went way past that. We're way slower now. And we're looking around and enjoying every fucking minute of this. Because I think back when we were younger, when we first started in 2014, it was more just like nose to the grindstone, just go, go, go. And feel that pain of just 18-hour days, 6 days a week, nonstop. And there's like that's not like you're better off being an employee if that's how you work. Or at least in our case, you have to wake up and smell the flowers sometimes. And honestly, living that way is like way less anxiety. It's way less uncertainty. You're just like, hey man, I'm not going to fully define what this looks like in the end because it's growing, it's changing, it's evolving every single day. And for this next little bit, I'm just going to roll with the punches. And I'm going to see where it goes, see what happens, grow organically, personally get better, let the business grow. And honestly, one thing we've noticed is when all of us are mentally good and we're taking care of our mental, our business is doing fantastic.
So that's good segue into the next thing I want to talk about, which is probably the biggest thing that I've noticed you guys do more than the rest of the people. You talk about mental health. And in our culture, in our community, right, there's this huge stigmatism that you can't talk about your feelings. You kind of internal compartmentalize your feelings. It's like you said, nose to the grindstone every day, work, where some days if you just keep that nose to the grind, you end up just burning yourself out and damaging your mentals, right? So how important or how much do you guys stress mental health, and how important is it to not just physical health, but just personal wellness in general?
Yeah, well, I think Romy will take this one. As far as his assessments go, what I really like about having him on the team is we as a brand have this holistic approach. Even with our training, it's like, you know, when Ben's back there, he's not just, you know, teaching the biomechanics of a squat and that's it. There's way more depth to it. Like he's actually getting to know the individual and, you know, figuring out what are their struggles and so forth. And then we're trying to like, you know, pick at things. How did you sleep and so forth. So with his assessment, he asks a lot of questions. So what would you say?
Yeah, so what I really notice is in order to really have optimal health, you need to dwell in the body, the mind, and the spirit, right? And that's why I feel like it was just a perfect connection with these guys, because that's what their business embodies. And that's what my business embodies. That's why it works so well. And for myself, I knew in my health journey, it was very similar. There was a lot of stuff that I needed to work on the mind and the spirit itself. So what I started doing was more meditation, you know, just being more present. That's one thing. I never used to read as much. My brother is a big reader. So I started getting into more reading, more self-growth and stuff. And I started noticing changes. And as Ben was mentioning before, it's that journey, because what they have gone through, the obstacles I grew through, I enjoy those obstacles now because I know the destination will come, but the work needs to be done in the kind of in the middle, right? So with my clients, what I work with is I kind of make steps. We're not going from here. What society kind of thinks is they want to go from point A to point Z. They don't want to do the work in the middle. Right, but it doesn't work like that. You're just kind of setting yourself up for failure. So it's more guiding them, making sure that we take the right steps to kind of get them to where they want to go. Right. So
even just toxic masculinity in general, where guys don't want to, like guys don't cry. Like I used to believe that too when I was a kid. Like you don't, but you bottle all that shit up and you couple that with ancestral trauma and traumatic experiences from your childhood, and you try and just kind of fucking hold the chest down. By the time you're 25, that shit's ready to blow. And that's where I find like a lot of dispersed energy just transfers, right? So it's going to transfer into negativity, or it's going to transfer into something else. We realized that really young, and we realized that we had to figure it out ourselves and how hard it was. I mean, even for myself, my first therapy appointment, like first time I ever went to a therapist was because Jazz fucking literally dragged my ass in there. But it was like late into my 20s. Like I want to say I was like 28, maybe even like 29. And after going through the gauntlet of that and seeing the benefits of it, I wish I had done it 10 years before. So, experience is the best teacher. Experience from others is the greatest teacher. So if we can talk about our experiences with mental health and kind of make that the new norm, because you got to remember, like a lot of the stuff that we've learned is from guys that were raised in the 90s. Now, those guys had a completely different plight, right? This is pre-internet days. This is where no one talked about shit. Everyone just kind of like went through the motions, right? And these are hardened individuals. So we learned from them and we started going through shit. We're like, yo, this can't be right. And we're like learning about mental health and all this type of stuff. So we kind of did a lot of unlearning. And now if we can kind of create, and one of our missions is that like having good mental health as a youth is the norm now. And the not normal thing to do is to not deal with your shit. Because if we do that, like I truly believe we can heal a whole generation of past traumas, current traumas, and future traumas if we just give people like tools for their mental health. And I can't say anymore that that's not talked about enough. It's talked about a lot, but actionable things that you can do are harder to find. It's a sexy topic to talk about, but to walk that walk and talk that talk is a totally different thing.
Right. And I want to touch on that a little bit because I actually had a conversation with Sim over the summertime. We had lunch together, we caught up, and he gave me a couple books to read, which I have to give back to you still. But one of the biggest things I took from that was he was talking about how in society, and this sticks with me till this day, is he said, in our culture, you're born, you go to school, you go to university, you pay your mortgage, you have kids, and that's it. That's your life, right? And I remember he was telling me, he's like, I didn't want to fall into that trap anymore, right? Because like you said, you look at your people before you, your generation, your older cousins, your older siblings, your parents, what do? They do that. Every day they do the same thing. And for me, being somebody, like you said, trying to follow in that someone's footstep, being somebody that doesn't kind of bucks the trend. I didn't want to do a regular 9-to-5 job, right? I did a degree in kinesiology, right? I had volunteered, did experience and stuff like that. And it wasn't for me, right? Similar to that, I found my passion in sports, but talking about sports and talking about my life, right? So then that led me here. And I think the biggest thing, if you guys can agree with this, is one of my biggest proponents is if you do something you love every day, you wake up every day and you love something you do, it doesn't feel like work. And I'm sure you guys feel the same way. It's when you guys get up every day now, it's not work. You're helping out people and you're doing what you love to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. It's when you have something like that, again, that unlearning thing, right? Like our parents, like we have what I call the first generation plight, right? So we grew up in a household where we were around immigrants, so they were hustlers. I've yet to meet a hustler as strong as a immigrant mom, making the whole household, going to work, doing the whole thing, right? When you are surrounded in that atmosphere, you feel like that is life. Like you're seeing your parents live it. That's the first example of what adulthood is and how you live your life. What the first generation plight is that learning that they did that so you can live your life different. So you can actually, they sacrifice their purpose so that you can have yours and pursue yours, because they didn't have the opportunity to go through that, early stages of like, they didn't have an opportunity to drive to Vancouver for $25 a session. They had kids to support, grandparents to support, and call family over. Totally different life. So you have to, if you're as a first generation, you have to like honor your parents' sacrifice. And that is to find your purpose, pursue your purpose, and live your fucking purpose every single day. And if you don't, you're not, and that doesn't mean like that's in your career. Like that could be, personal hobbies, like your passion. You don't have to make money off of it. Just pursue your passion and find your passion and go after it. That's the best way to honor their sacrifice, I believe.
I think it's definitely a big talking point in our culture, and it's something that I hope that in the future going forward that people do appreciate that, hey, like it's okay to talk about your feelings. It's okay some days that you don't want to get out of bed and go to work, right? Some days you don't, but the thing is you have to do it. You have to keep grinding away, right? But to talk to somebody, like I think the biggest thing is people just ask, sometimes asking your friend how's it going, right? Or asking your sibling just, hey, how you doing, right? That could open up a floodgate of somebody releasing their feelings to you and seeing that, hey man, I'm actually not feeling that good right now. I'm kind of in a funk right now. And then 99% of the time, if people truly love you and truly care about you, they will help you through that tough time.
Right. No, definitely. Sometimes it's hard to see your friend go through something and like, fuck, do I even want to open up this Pandora's box? Like the person asking is like, I don't know how to deal with this. So even if you have someone going through it, like doing your research around what are the right questions to ask, what are the wrong questions to ask, and what to do with their feelings, right?
Most definitely. But speaking of that change, right? Every day you guys work with people and you see a change in them. How rewarding is that, seeing a client who came in from, like, as you said, point A and reached that, not the final endpoint, but making that progress every day? How rewarding is that for you guys?
That's our main, I think, driver. Like that's more valuable to us than what they pay us for. I think that's if in a day we do something and the person's, says, hey, I noticed this, or I got a compliment from such and such, or I'm beginning to notice I have more energy, and they say these things, right? I feel like that is the reason why we do this. There's nothing that motivates us more and gets us going than hearing that, because that's when we know we've carried out our promise, we've delivered on our promise, and that is what we're here to do.
Yeah. So for myself, like I have a 4-year-old daughter, and raising a kid can be difficult. It can require a lot of energy. So for me, that's one of my motivations as well too. I wanted to have more energy, so I wanted to work on my health as well too. And then when I talk to my clients and they have kids and they start getting more energy, I just feel like, this is what I was meant to do, right? And that I incurred change in the world. And now, this dad can spend more time with his daughter and maybe not be so stressed out, right? So these things are very, very rewarding. And like my brother said, I think, that's what drives us and makes us wake up and be like, hey, let's go do this thing, because this is what we're born to do.
I like how you said that you wanted, that your daughter kind of inspired you as well, because you want to have more energy to hang out with her and be there for her, right? Because that's, at the end of the day, right, that's your daughter, right? That's your pride and joy. You want every day to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward to make sure that she's there with you, right? Now, one thing I did want to touch back on was for the younger generation, people my age and younger than me, right? You guys have all been through the game, as they say, the last decade, right? You guys have the experience and stuff like that. What would you guys say to the younger generation wanting to pursue their passions as careers, right? And like you said, getting into business with your brother or your best friend, or as you said, your so-called brother. What is some advice you would have to those people?
It looks a lot funner, easier, glamorous on Instagram, and I'll tell you right now, it's nothing like that. It seems like, oh yeah, this looks cool and so forth, but you have to really be willing to put in the work. Entrepreneurship is no joke whatsoever. With the market spaces, like there's more and more companies coming out always. There's always tighter, stiffer competition and so forth. So you have to really deliver on your promise, and you have to wake up and you have to treat it like, you're an athlete and this is your thing. Like how they talk about Tim Grover talks about Kobe Bryant's work ethic, Michael Jordan's work ethic, these people, these cleaners, right? And what's their attitude? And I feel like if you want to survive in entrepreneurship, you have to have that style of attitude. It doesn't just stop when you've finished your, say, session or whatever the actual making of the hot dog of your business is. That you got to go home and now you got to work on yourself, and now you got to do your meditation, you got to do this. There's many parts to it, and it's about finding that balance in all the parts. I find that that's the art of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, and I think there's a whole slew of, whether you've gone to school, you're a dropout, or you've got your EA. There's a whole education that takes place that you have to figure out on your own. And the resources are out there. Like in the university of what I call the university of the internet, information is readily available. There is no more excuses. If you see something that's not really working, someone's had that problem and they figured it out. You have to go out and find that stuff. And if you don't, you're going to just be stuck in a hamster wheel, right? So there is like you have to go through, and you can't refuse to not learn marketing. You can't refuse to, I'm not going to take care of my mental, and I'm just going to kind of grind it through. That's the stuff like like our parents kind of did, and like you can see the detriment of that, the effect of that, like them not taking care of their own. So you got to take care of yourself. You got to do your extra education on top of everything. And those first couple of years, there is no clock out. You're thinking about the business, you're living the breathing the business until you can't anymore. And you've set up the systems in place where you can take a step back and kind of like, okay, I'm going to take a deep breath now. I'm going to take a vacation, or I'm going to go do that. It's a fine line, right? Being too hard on yourself and being too easy on yourself. But I remember the first couple of years, I felt like I woke up, think about this stuff, went to sleep, dreaming about this stuff, and lived it. And that, I think, I don't know, maybe it's a bias because that's just the way we did it, but I don't feel like there's another way to do that, at least to kind of like, make a career out of this and do your thing, right?
Yeah, totally.
Capitalism, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Exactly. Couple more questions. Because you guys are, again, in the realm of sport and athletics, I want to ask you a question. What does sport mean to you?
Sport means to me is what I've kind of learned is I've always been competitive. And I think it's not just competitive with others, but competitive with myself, because I feel like I get to see growth in myself. And for me as a kid, even though I was overweight, I was very athletic, I would say. I could move. And for some reason, when I played any type of sports, I felt like I can go into flow. For me, that was meditation as a kid. Being outside and playing hockey and shooting at a recycling bin for hours and hours. I felt like that time kind of stood for me. And I feel like there's a lot of athletes that feel that same passion. So for me, it was, just competing with yourself and just pushing yourself and knowing that, hey, you can grow, you can keep growing. So I would say that's what kind of is for me for sports, and just that camaraderie, that teamwork as well too. When you have the team sports, I think that's huge as well too. And it's just not, it's that brotherhood, just having everybody by you, and you kind of motivate each other. And I think that's what sports is to me personally.
I think for myself, sport is it's a metaphor for life. I mean, sport is life, and life is a sport, right? You have your ups, your downs, your wins, your losses, and you have your battles along the way, right? And it's just to gamify everything. If you can make a game out of anything and make it fun, that's part of our job as well, because sometimes the exercises, people just aren't into working out, right? And they have goals in mind and stuff like that. If you gamify exercises, is like, for example, you, instead of traditional squat, you do a squat with a press, and then you go into a push-up, and you make it like into rounds, or you, instead of reps, you count points and stuff like that. So I think sport is a metaphor for life. You live it, you play it, you win it, you lose it, and you compete all along the way.
Yeah, I think sport is definitely, on any level, it's just about figuring out what are the performance parameters, what are the areas that you're going to be tested on and so forth that are going to matter in your respective sport. Getting good at that, that's where the self-help and working on yourself comes in. and then bringing the package to game day and then executing on everything that you've learned and that you've carried out. And then if things don't go your way and you walk away with the L, then you go back in and, you know, it's off season time. It's time to get better again. And then let's hit it again.
I feel like with running for myself, like you're like, oh, like when you hit that breaking point, I tend to just, you know, stop. I'm done. Forget it.
Or running is one of those things. I did it for my mental, and I ended up getting some great benefits physically. Like it's the best I've ever looked and best I've ever felt. And something just like you're a lone wolf out there. It's a one-person sport, and it's you figuring out what can you do. And you learn a lot about yourself when you're running, man. Like you learn, when do I start to bitch out, and when do I start going easy on myself? When do I give in to my excuses? And the other thing I learned is when you are running and you think you're done, you're just like, anytime you think I have to stop, I have to start working, you're about to break a wind. And there's an infinite amount of wins you can break in running, right? You have your first win, usually the hardest one to break, and then your second win, third win. I've broken, like when I was doing my half marathon, I was on my 11th wind. And like you get this weird like resurgence of energy after you break a wind. And you realize quick that like you think you're done and you're only getting started. Like who is it that says like when you think you're finished, you still have 40% more left in the tank? The homie. Yeah, exactly. Goggins.
And I think you can use that as a life reference as well too, right? That breaking the winds could be just obstacles in life as well too, you know, breaking those obstacles.
One thing I'm trying to work on, just in life in general, is pushing myself past that point of like, oh, it's too much, right? Because growing up, I was always at that point where like, like it's too much and I don't want to do it anymore, right? Where now, as I got older, I'm like, if I want to truly reach like your goals and aspirations, you got to kind of punch through that glass ceiling, right? And it's hard. I'm going to be honest with you. It's really,
it's tough, man.
It's really, really hard to do.
I find that like, I don't know, I use this analogy too much, or this comparison too much, but if it's not going to kill me, I'm going to keep going. And now that's a bad thing when I'm snowboarding up in Whistler and coming down a fucking hill. But when you're running and you feel like you're going to give up, are you going to die? Are you going to just start to hyperventilate and hit the ground and that's it? No, you're a lot stronger than that. So when you use that as your scale of like, that's when I'm going to stop, when I know I'm about to have a heart attack and I'm going to die, you get to break through that ceiling. So it's not so much this, you just got to lift the ceiling up higher and be like, okay, I'm only going to stop if I break something. And until then, I'm going to see what this, like, what a shame it is for us not to know what our body's capable of. Like, I want to know how far I can push this to the limit without hurting myself. And really see, like, it's like, you know, having the guy that owns a Ferrari and just leaves it in his garage. It's like, no, break that thing in. See, your body is your Ferrari. See what you can do and what you can't do. And then it slowly starts to become important to you. And thus starts your journey in health and fitness and stuff like that.
Yeah, like I know for myself, like always being afraid to ask for questions was a huge thing. Like I never wanted to ask questions because I felt I don't want to look stupid. B, I don't want to expose my problems to other people, right? And C, I don't want to get turned down, right? Yeah. And that's something that's been a huge internal struggle for myself. Like, for example, when I was working at Bell, this is after I left with Sim, I wanted to move up in the company because I felt with my skills and the way I worked, I felt I could move up to become an assistant manager and stuff like that, right? And I was too scared to ask other people because I felt that they were going to turn me down, right? And that's something that I look at, and that was kind of like the waking point of me. Where like, because I looked at people, because now looking back at Bell, I see people now, I still friends with the company. They're telling me, yo, this so-and-so's now a store manager, right? And I'm like, this person started after me and they weren't half as good as I was, right? And it's kind of like that recollection where if you don't ask, you already have a no, right? And that's something that my parents have always kind of told me is just ask, right? So that's why like, it's something that it's a work in progress for myself, but I think I'm definitely seeing strides with that as well.
It sounds like you're learning your relationship with your ego, and it's important for almost everybody. And everyone thinks of ego when they think of bravado and I'm better than everyone. It's like, no, the ego is a lot more subtle than that, right? The ego is the one that'll tell you, you know, like, what am I thinking about here? Like, yeah, like, how did this person get this job and I didn't? It's like you're asking the wrong questions. It's like, okay, what did that guy do to become successful, right? I'm too shy or I'm too scared of rejection, so I'm not going to ask. It's like, no, your ego's telling you you're sitting on a high horse. Like, who doesn't get rejected? Who doesn't have, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So studying the ego, learning how your ego works. And I don't like. I think there's a lot of information out there, and there's a school of thought that is to dissolve your ego, and I don't know if I agree with that. I think it's to have a relationship with your ego. Your ego is the same one that'll have the audacity to start a company from scratch and drive around all around Vancouver to try and get, clients. And the ego is the same one that'll think that you're the shit when you're really not and make you look like, you're an idiot, right? So having a healthy relationship with your ego is very important.
I don't know if you guys agree with this too, but I think like you always have to humble yourself, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think like for myself, I felt like there's been points in times where I've been doing this podcast and people are like, oh, you're doing a really great job, really great job. Your chest kind of gets pumped out. You're like, oh yeah, I'm doing a pretty good job. But yeah. And then, for myself, I look back on these episodes. I look back and say, oh wow, I could have done this and this better. I could do this and this better, right? Where, like, for example, I have a stutter. I don't know if you guys have noticed it, but I have a stutter sometimes, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So one of the things I've been trying to work on is like looking at vocal training, right? Trying to work on enunciating my voice a lot more, working on making sure I'm speaking, it sounds clear because I also talk really fast, right? So I think for myself, the biggest thing is just to humble yourself. Like take yourself, like you said, off that pedestal and put yourself back at ground zero, right? And you still climb every day. That's kind of why I named it Process Sports, because I think anything in life is a process, right? Anything, whether it's athletics, work, job, school, whatever, right? Like it's a process, right?
How do you do that? How do you do you analyze yourself? Is that one of those things, or like you go back, you look at your episodes and stuff?
Yeah, like to track back, the whole reason I kind of got into this was I had, like, as you guys all said, you had that epiphany moment in your life where you're like, what am I doing, right? And for myself, it was I was finishing up my degree last year, and I realized, like, what am I doing? Like, I had started with a goal out of high school. Oh, I want to become a chiro or a physio. That's what I wanted to do with my life, right? And going through that process, right, and realizing, maybe that's not for me. Okay, well, maybe I can go into sales because I felt I was good at sales. And then I realized I like sales. I like talking to people, but I don't think I have I don't think I love it too much, right? And I think it was my mom and dad sat me down. Like they're kind of like my two biggest like influences in life, my biggest role models in life, because like you said, seeing those two go every day to work, sometimes working on weekends till like 10 o'clock at night or whatever. Those two people drive me to what I want to, give it back to them, right? And they sat me down and said, look, if you don't want to do what you're doing right now, that's fine. We're not putting a gun to your head and saying, hey, you have to be whatever, this and this and this. We want you to be happy. We don't want you to wake up every morning doing a job you hate to do, right? Like we do. And for me, that was like, okay, well, what am I going to do then? And then researching, and I found this schools in Toronto, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do this. And similar to what you guys said is like, when I came out here, I thought of it like I thought it was an experience, but I also took it as a mission, right? As a mission to, I can't come back home as a failure, right? I started this, I gotta finish it, and I'm gonna be the best at it, right? And I'm gonna be honest with you, like every day, some days it's hard, right? I've never been away from home, I've never been away from my friends, I've never been living on my own, right? And it's hard. Like I'm sure it's, you guys can attest to it as well. Like there's days I wake up and I'm like, what am I doing here? I look out my window, I'm like, what the hell am I doing in Toronto, right? Like I left my comfort zone back home where, I had a car always readily available to me. I had a fridge full of food, laundry done, everything done. Now I have to do it all by myself, right? It's hard. And I'm like, my friends would go, oh, I must be sick living in Toronto by yourself, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, dude.
Come do it and find out, right?
Like, it's overrated living by yourself. Like I miss living at home, right? I miss having like my mom down the hall right there, right? It's tough, but
how many people do we know that became successful being super comfortable hanging out on the couch?
Never, and that's the one thing. You never leave. You have to leave your comfort zone to be healthy.
You have to live outside your comfort zone. But I think you touched on something super powerful. That is like, ask yourself, how good is your support system? Like, if you are in a circle of comrades that are not pushing you and not expecting the best from you and not checking you when your ego's getting too big or picking you up when you are in the shits. Well, you don't have a circle, you have a square, right? And that's what Nipsey said. And I firmly believe that you are only as good. Yes, you're only going to make the amount, like growing up, you are going to make the same amount of money as the 5 people you hang out with the most. Well, your mental health and your success is going to be determined by the 5 people you hang out with as well.
Yeah.
And if you're not pushing yourself and you're not pushing the others around you, because you have a job in that circle too. That circle just isn't around you. You're in that circle. So you have a role to push and make sure everybody's good around you so that that support system will take care of you too. And if you don't do that, you got to get the fuck out that circle, because that square has closed off corners. And they're dark.
Yeah. How do you guys, like, I'm assuming you guys all have mentors. How important do you think mentors are to lean on when you're going through, like, exactly through this journey?
I think Jazz and I have 2 conflicting opinions on mentors. So Jazz, why don't you go first on mentors?
Yeah, I think, well, I think they're important, and you want to find someone to, the thing is you don't necessarily need a specific person, like, okay, yeah, this guy's going to tell me everything. I think humans in general are just human textbooks. So take whatever it is that you're trying to do, find someone that's in that area that's done it well and so forth, and then just message them or call them or email them and say, hey, how'd you do this? It's kind of like how Richard Kiyosaki talks about in Rich Dad Poor Dad with wealth. Just go to a rich man and ask him, hey, how'd you make all this money? After a while, like, the guy's not going to say no. He'll teach you exactly how you did it. And so I think in that sense, they're very important. But I like taking a little bit from a lot of different people and kind of making my own style from that. Sometimes you'll see that you'll have someone that's in your life and, it seems like the person's like a mentor, but they really only excel at one piece of their life and they're not good at all other areas.
For myself, I've had only a handful of mentors, but I've always just eventually just been let down by them. And that's why I'm always like, I forget who it is. I think it was J. Cole that said that, be careful to meet your mentors because they're going to inevitably let you down. And that's what I've had. So I feel like I've taken a step back from finding mentors to finding inspiration, because the inspiration has served me well my whole life. From rappers to other moguls that I've kind of studied and seen that, okay, if this person can do it, I can do it as well. And this is how these people came up with adversity. So I think I observe from afar, take from that what I will, and then kind of keep it moving from there. But any mentors that I've had, I think close to in my life, I've only been eventually let down by. So I'm kind of like weary of that.
And I think, I think, as you said, like, I think what Charles Barkley, when he said, I'm not a role model, right? I'm a basketball player, right? And I, like, to be honest, like, I have people that I look up to that I want to not emulate, but kind of see their path, right? You look at guys like Stephen A. Smith, for example. I look at Stephen A. Smith and I see that's what I want in life. That's who I want to be. I want to be on TV, the loud, braggadocious guy like that on TV. Maybe not saying those type of takes, but that's what I want to be like, right? Mm-hmm. So studying him and understanding his journey and stuff like that has been I'd say kind of what you said is inspiration per se, right? Where that's somebody where I can see that's how he grinded every day. And he said, he was had to cover high school sports in New York, the college sports in Philadelphia, pro sports every day. Then he got a career at ESPN, right? That is something that's an inspiration where it shows you the process and the grind he went through, right? But also for mentor-wise, like, as you said, Jazz, I was able to reach out to a local radio host in Vancouver who, helped me out. Like, they said, hey man, we love what you're doing. That's good stuff. Keep that up, right? So I think I see where both of you guys stand on that. And I think, speaking of inspirations, right? What are some of your guys' biggest inspirations?
Definitely Nipsey, for the same reasons of Jay-Z, with, I think, his business acumen, coming from like a street dude, figuring out, I'm going to charge $100 a mixtape. Back when people aren't selling any physical copies because it's just everything's online. Mm-hmm. And then the audacity to sell $1,000 mixtape and still do just as well. And still, like, taking the store he used to hustle out in front of and then buying that building and selling his product out of that and stuff like that. I think that's where we find inspiration, like a lot of stuff that other people have done in different industries. Yeah, that's where I'm at with that.
Yeah, I think basically like Jay-Z in what he did with music and business, that was a big inspiration to us. But I would say, like, things is, for me, I read a lot about the mob, so I say different mafia families and things like that. Aside from a lot of the illegal and bad parts of the mob, I mean, there was a lot of organization as well, and a lot of business acumen held within those organizations. So I kind of, I'm interested in some of that stuff, and it inspires me. as well as far as business is concerned. But as far as marketing, I would say like Seth Godin was one of the goats, I would say, in marketing, and I like a lot of his books. And Malcolm Gladwell really speaks to both of us a lot, and we kind of like his style on a lot of those things. But other than that, I think we always have like this wide array, and throughout the years, there'll be like a few guys that were like, oh, we'll read this work, we're really motivated by it, and then it kind of goes on the back burner, and then we're on to the next piece of work and so forth. But if we had to pick like a foundational sort of mentors, I think Jay-Z always ends up topping that list.
I think inspiration's like it's like a fickle creature. I mean, it'll find you in the weirdest things, you know, like you'll watch a movie, or I'll be watching Tony Soprano and talking to his therapist, and then boom, I'll like have like, oh shit, like that's a cool concept for like this or that, or like a post or something like that. Inspiration will find you in the weirdest fucking way. You'll be doing a hike in the mountain somewhere, and something will just come to you, and you don't even know where it comes from, right? Yeah, it's really interesting. You can't go out looking for it. Sometimes it just finds you.
Yeah, like Ben said, like for me, it's just that every day, right? There's always inspiration around us. Are we conscious enough to see it? And like for myself as well, books is very inspiring. Right now, I'm going through a lot of self growth. So I read the Four Agreements, The Alchemist, right? Like these books are very, very inspiring. So these little things, or like Ben said, like going hiking or going for a run, seeing something, right? And people around you, like my daughter, my brother, Ben, like everyone around you, and they inspire you as well too, right? It's just about are you conscious enough to see that inspiration, take it in, and actually do something with that inspiration and move it forward, right?
I like what Jazz said there about the whole mob thing, because as you guys see, I have the Goodfellas poster, and the Scarface poster right there. Okay? I think honestly, like those movies, those old school mob movies, have some of the biggest lessons in life in there. Like, I was talking to one of my best friend, right? We're talking about Casino and Goodfellas, right? He's like, honestly, dude, like I learned more about life in those movies than anything else I've ever done, because they teach you about loyalty, right? They teach you about friendship, trust, and just like even a guy like Scarface, man, like just the grind, not trusting people, right?
Exactly.
I think like I wish they made more movies like that, because the messaging is so crucial.
I think what they in the back in those times, I can't believe we're talking about the 90s, like back in those times, says fuck. But they invested a lot more into a dense script, and less on the visual side. That's why a lot of people going back to those movies kind of have a tough time watching it. Like if you have someone that was born in 2006, 2007, you show them Goodfellas, they're gonna be like, well, fuck, where's the CGI? Like, what the fuck is this? But like, I always have this one. I don't know if you guys have seen this, The Ascent of a Woman by with Al Pacino. He's got a monologue at the end of the movie, and he's a blind military guy that wants to kill himself, and he has this kid, like a caretaker, and he's a college kid, Ivy Leaguer, doesn't come from a wealthy school or whatever. All this shit goes down, and he has this one monologue at the end of how this Ivy League school is creating a rat shit because they want this kid to rat on whatever an incident happened and stuff like that. And he sits there in front of everybody and he's going off. He's doing the Al Pacino voice. It's just like, it's probably one of the most dynamic scenes in movie history for myself, that is, to this day, even talking about it gives me goosebumps. But he goes off and he talks about how this one kid that has balls to not open his mouth has bigger balls than anyone else that's got all this money and all this stuff. And I take crazy inspiration from that. Even Any Given Sunday, like with that Al Pacino monologue, Inches, right? Pieces and Inches. So that type of stuff, like that shit gets me rattled up. Like, like that's even before our marathon, we were watching stuff like that kind of just, you got an engine inside of you. You got to keep that fucking fire going. And sometimes you want a steady state, and sometimes you want to just burn that motherfucker up, right? And you got to just find whatever fuels you and keep looking for it.
Yeah, like LeBron. I know when they won the title in Cleveland, I think he said he watched The Godfather every time before a game. Like that's like, because it's the lessons it taught you in there, how to bring together an organization, but also like that was a way to get him fired up, right? So I think there's so many lessons in these old school movies now where, like you said, it's all, or just even like I'm a big old school hip hop guy, right? I love listening to Jay-Z. All my, like, it's funny, a lot of my friends say, why do you listen to Jay-Z? Like he doesn't have like the beat or anything like that, but when you listen to the words he says and the words he raps about, Like there's that one song I forget, it's on Reasonable Doubt. I think it's Can I Live, where he's
Yeah.
talking about like the way he
That's
keeps
the one,
one eye
yeah.
open like CBS, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That for me is like you listen to that, you understand what he's talking about. There's such a deeper message means that. Whereas now in hip hop, it's like all about bottles, girls,
Yeah.
money, cars, right? And
Yeah.
that you can't like, yeah, that's what you emulate to look like because that's what kids our age want to be like. They want to have, you know, all the nice fancy clothes, fancy cars. But myself, that's what I used to look like. Like, oh yeah, that's success for me. If I have, you know, like a German car outside. I have like the night, Gucci shoes, Gucci whatever, right? And that was success for me, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
now looking at it, I'm like, no, like I'd rather create my own thing, create my own wave, right? That for me is success. And I don't like, is that something that you guys can relate to as well? Like creating your own brand, creating your own avenue, your own channel. That's something that I think is way more powerful than whatever money can bring you.
Definitely. I mean, there's definitely like, stuff that you have to distinguish, like what does your ego want and what is stuff that you're just genuinely interested in. So if you're interested in nice cars and that's just something that you're into, not necessarily to flex and let your ego do your thing. I mean, if you're working hard and you're doing that, don't feel guilty. I mean, Jazz and I both had that issue where we're like, oh man, okay, I want to get a nice car, but I don't want people to think I'm flexing or whatever, this, that, and the rest. And again, finding inspiration in those weird things. We actually saw a video of Babuman, and someone asked him the same question. They're like, you bought this one car and you totally took it apart as brand new and blah blah blah, and that's kind of like, people don't have that kind of money, and you're kind of doing that. So it's kind of weird. And he's like, I work hard. He's like, I put in 18 hours a day in the studio. Of course, I'm gonna go buy the car because I'm into that, right? Why wouldn't I buy it? And it's not, he wasn't saying it as in like, oh, look at the fucking car I got. It was like, no, man, like that's something I'm just into. It's not egoic. It's not none of that. It's a general interest of mine since I was a kid, right? And so you have to kind of distinguish what are you doing for the ego and what are you doing for stuff that you're actually genuinely into, right? And then you can determine what's the flex and what is it that you're actually into. Yes, building the brand and having like now I think in our 30s we're starting to talk about legacy more. And what do we want to leave our kids? What is it, this brand that we've created? It's got to stay here years, hundreds of years after we're long and gone. And that's where I think we're starting to channel a lot of our energy. And yeah, okay, you got the German car outside. That's great. Put that off to the side. Focus back onto what's the main thing. Back onto the main thing. Okay, what's the legacy? What is that? And then you always go back to the work. But I think it's always important to wake up and smell the flowers and be able to enjoy the benefits of your hard work in the past, present, and then going into the future.
Success just comes down to the small things, man. There's small things that entrepreneurs can do that other people can't do. Like you want to take a day off, sure, go ahead, reschedule. Like you want to take a weekend off, you want to go out of town, yeah, you could do it. You don't have to ask anybody to, oh, I need this time off and so forth and things like that. But on the same end, you have to work 12 hours sometimes. Sometimes you have to work a longer time than other things. So I think some people might see success in the fact that they can walk their kid to school. I see success in the fact that I can go swimming in the morning or for a run before I can go to work, and I don't have to start super early and things of that nature. And so I think success, you have to just make it, you have to create your own definition. Once you start following other people's definitions, like you started off with, that's where the problem lies. Is that's not, yeah, you think, you want to be successful, Frank?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
When he has that moment in the movie, it's like,
this is the consequence of your success. But like, yeah, I think, I mean, I don't want to say this is an Indian problem. I think it's an immigrant thing where we play the comparison. We're always, 100%. Trying to compare ourselves to the Gills, trying to compare ourselves to the Sandus. And you're almost, again, fuck, dude, so much of life when you're growing up is unlearning a lot of this stuff. And it's fucking hard defining what success is to you or what freedom is to you. And if you're living, and what even your purpose is, it's like, what the fuck does that even mean? But it just starts with just asking yourself these questions. I mean, the two brains, right? Consciously ask yourself and then subconsciously let that thing process. You don't need the answers right away. Like some of our best stuff has come to us at random points, but it's questions we've asked maybe 6 months earlier, maybe a year earlier, where we were like, okay, this is kind of where we're going to go with it. And then boom, right? Yeah, so like I think it's more than just unlearning, relearning new shit, and then kind of like asking yourself the right questions and really diving deep, but not making it quick, man. It's just a longer process. This life it's a long game, man. It's not like I need what's my next 5 years look like. It's like no, take a deep breath and take it a little bit slower so that you can actually see things through. Sometimes we go half-ass shit and then it kind of blows up in our face, and then we start back from the bottom again. Whereas if we went slower, we can keep going, break that ceiling, and keep going. Right? It's just endless from there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think going back to touch on goal setting like that is one of the biggest things for me was actually writing physically on a piece of paper, writing down my goals. Right. I don't know. Is that something that you guys do? Did you guys ever just write down your goals or kind of like have a remembrance of that's what the path or that's what I want to attain one day is?
We're big proponents of the whiteboard lifestyle, man. So if
See that
it's
on your
not
guys'
written down,
Instagram, yeah.
it's not going to happen. There's a famous quote from Mad Men. It's called, it goes, the faintest ink, so the ink that you can barely see, is more powerful than the most vivid memory because you'll forget shit. If it's in your brain, you can forget it. Or even if it's written on a piece of paper with the faintest ink, it's fucking real. It's alive. It's a living, breathing thing at that point, and you can't ignore it. You can ignore your memories. You can ignore what's in your head. You can't ignore what's on the whiteboard. So you gotta respect what you write down, and when you do, that's when shit starts to happen.
Jazz, I've been seeing your social media, and I see you're a Boston Celtics fan. They're not doing too good right now. If you were Brad Stevens or Danny Ainge, what would you do to change the Boston Celtics?
You know what? I would have never brought Kyrie into the mix. I think ever since he freaking came into the team, he really messed things up. But you know what? This season, I haven't really been following it too closely. So on like a level like that, I don't know. I personally, as a fan, I feel like that one playoff run that we had where Kyrie wasn't involved and Jaylen Brown was really showing out. Tatum was young, but he was still doing really good. And then we had Terry Rozier and things like that. I think that there was moments where like the team jived really well, and it now the jiving is just kind of going out. Some people are saying, "Oh, you need more star power and so forth." But I don't believe in that. I think even with business too, sometimes you could be in a group of 3 business partners, and it's just not working well, and then you remove one, and now something starts to work differently. Or when teams are changing, you see these 2 players jive better than these 2 players. That Durant and Kyrie might jive better than Kyrie did when he was on the Celtics. So I think finding the chemistry, I think that's what they need to do. They need to find chemistry between people, and it's not necessarily about star power. I feel like you can create something without the star power. It's just about having the right role players, and I always believe in that. I think businesses always have to run off of role players.
Yeah, I feel like chemistry is the conduit to the universe. So the universe doesn't line up until your chemistry's lined up. And that could be, yes, your relationships around you, that could be your brain chemistry, that could be anything, but chemistry is the conduit to what connects you to the universe.
Since we're on the topic of sports, professional sports, what are some athletes that you enjoy watching or you are big fans of?
Tom Brady.
I'm right, baby. I was just gonna say Brady, for more than just like winning the championships, for like what he did for Antonio Brown, like move the guy into his pool house. The guy is a write-off. No one wants to touch him. He's toxic. He moves into Brady's pool house, and Brady makes him a Super Bowl champion. Like that's probably the greatest Cinderella story that no one's gonna talk about 10 years from now. It's fucked, man.
Yeah,
We like these runners too, man. These Kenneth Spicali, Kipchoge. Like some of the mentality of like those marathon runners is insane, and it's very inspirational to see like their training programs and kind of what they're doing. But LeBron James, we always hail as one of the greatest athletes that we actually got to see him play. Like that was such an honor to be able to see that.
LeBron as well. Like you touched on Jay-Z and his business acumen. LeBron's the same way. If you look at it, the way he runs his business acumen, the way he's always so calculated and making sure that he's puts himself in a position not only for on-court success, but off-court success as well. And the one thing that I always love about LeBron is he took his friends with him. Well, he didn't give them anything. He put them in positions to be successful. So you look at his right-hand man, Maverick Carter. I was reading his book, a book about LeBron. Yeah, he said he opened up a lane with Maverick Carter to get an opportunity, but Maverick Carter still had to go to Nike, work at an internship there, and grow in that aspect, right? And I think when you have success and you reach that level, and it's great. But when you bring the people that were with you when you had nothing, you bring them up with you. That's something that I think is unbelievable.
It's like the story. It's like a dream for any kid growing up. I mean, you have your friend circle and they're like, yo, I don't want to just make it. I want to make sure we all make it. And
Exactly.
like again, as humans and for human achievement, Stephen Coulter touches on this in his book, The Rise of Superman. It's like the study of flow state, and it's like when you see someone, like it may have taken someone, say, 20 years to do the first backflip in snowboarding. That's not the case, but I'm just saying that just as an example. After that first person's done it, it only takes a few months for the next person to do it. Because as humans, we see, oh, you just did that. Okay, I know I can do it. Now I can keep working towards this until I get it. So that first barrier gets a lot quicker than that first person to kind of break through. So when someone like LeBron does that and shows a whole generation that you can do this and bring the homies with you, everyone else starts doing it, right? There's like a huge ripple effect that starts happening from your own achievements. And I think, like Nipsey says again, the highest form, the inspiration is the highest human act, right? And I think if you live your life like that, not to think that egoically, like, oh, look, I'm a huge inspiration. It's like, no, keep doing things, but doing things remembering that people are watching. And you got to do things. It's like an automatic, like keeping you on track, where I'm not just doing this for me. There's a whole generation watching me, and I got to make sure that I do it right. Because if my mistakes become their mistakes, and it's just going to ripple down the wrong way, right? So it's wild like that, man.
Last question is, what is next for FitNation? What are some goals and aspirations you guys have next going forward?
2021, what we started off with is we don't have any new goals. This is a year of execution. Like we said a lot of stuff, and 2020 fucked up a lot of people's plans. 2021 is the year we execute on nutrition, running hard, athlete development going hard, our training side going hard, rehab just keep blowing up the way it's blowing up, and then whatever the future lies, we kind of take it in stride.
Our plan is to be relentless. That's the plan. That's it.
Simple.
There's no, it doesn't matter what we've done in the past. Doesn't matter if you got any championship rings. Now that you go back to scratch, treat it like it's day one. Yeah. Treat it like you're an intern.
Yeah, and right? with the addition of our new contract, like our partnerships and stuff that we have, it feels like 2014 again. I was telling Jazz, it feels like 2013. Like if we got that old Jigga hustle again, where we're like, okay, every day we're up before our alarm, we're fucking at it. There's no dips in energy. Where every chemistry's good, universe is definitely aligned, and we're doing what we're saying. We're executing.
That's I like that.
We signed LaMelo. We signed LaMelo.
You got your hoodie Melo, vintage Melos.
Yeah. That's right. We got LaMelo, and so this year's going to be a big year, man. We've had good draft picks in the last couple of years. So,
like I said, guys, I really appreciate you guys coming on. I think for myself, it was a true honor having you guys on, seeing guys from the local community doing what they love to do, and now seeing you guys grinding for that 10, 12 years, and now creating a legacy. I think that's something that is truly, truly crazy. I want to thank you guys for coming on. I know it's Saturday morning. You guys have 10K runs to do and stuff like that.
We appreciate you. Thank you for having us on. This is actually probably one of the better podcasts we've done. This was a cool flowing conversation, man.
Yeah, man. That's all.
We'll have to link up when you're back in BC now.
100%. But yeah, guys, like I said, this will be up on all platforms: YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Make sure to follow them. I will make sure I drop all their socials in it. They're truly doing amazing things with the community. And take care, everybody.
Cool, man. Peace and love.